Hey everybody, I'm T. Ferguson.
Hey, and I'm Patrick Jager, and welcome to the Distillery.
This is an ongoing conversation, as you know, created for and by our creative media community.
T and I developed this project because we were concerned that too many of our friends and colleagues were just kind of floating, and we wanted a way to discuss things that seem important to all of us.
Yeah, and we're excited that you're here for today's conversation, which is focused on how we're thinking differently as we're moving beyond the pandemic, beyond the election, beyond this year and into the next, etc.
But as always, we start our conversation by looking at the results of our latest poll. Our poll this week: in the season of less than normal, how important is sharing the wealth across your creative community? And by this, we're not talking about financial wealth. We're talking about intellectual wealth, occupational wealth. Mr. Ferguson, what were the results?
Yeah, I was interested with this one. I was hoping it'd get a little juicy, but it was nice to see actually of the options, a large group of people, 89% actually said that what's mine is yours, which is really great. And I think that says a lot in this day and age and in the world that we're living, that people are willing to give of themselves to help the larger good, the larger community. A couple of people admittedly did say yes, but for my circle only, which I totally get. And I think as a lot of entrepreneurs and a lot of people that are really, and a lot of people that are in the early stages of starting new careers, etc., that makes sense. And then nobody said if it's an easy ask. Nobody said if that they said no, that they'll hold on to everything themselves, which was good.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me either. I mean, I for one, as someone who voted in my own poll, which I think is probably smart, I definitely voted what's mine is yours. And I think for a couple of reasons. Number one, when people are this kind of isolated, I mean, we were all sitting in our homes kind of freaked out, like, are we ever going back to our offices? Are we ever going to work again? Like, what's going to happen? Are we going to have productions? Are people going to hire people like us? There was a sense of, let's get through this together. I've loved how many people have been posting, for example, on LinkedIn, jobs they know that are available that they can refer to. And I think that's really cool. But the other thing is that nothing we do is rocket science. I mean, there's nothing we're doing. We're all just reassembling parts that already exist. So other than like trade secrets of clients, why couldn't we all share and feel like we could be part of this? I mean, that's really, truly, I think what separates the people that are watching this from others is that we are all on here because we want to share and be there for one another.
Right. I think it's important. It's part of the community that I think we're building and nurturing as well during this time. And, you know, for me, and this was really important in the beginning of the pandemic. And I thank you a lot for this, but we had weekly calls and it was just, you know, gab sessions and bitching and also, you know, moments of like discovery. And that was very fun. It was very needed. And that's obviously what led us what's led us here, which is pretty cool. But yeah, so thank you. And I think for, you know, everyone else that I've spoken to throughout all of this, it's a really good example of them sharing the wealth with me. And so I'm grateful for that.
Yeah, I would agree. And speaking of sharing the wealth, let's introduce our guests and get them involved in this conversation.
Yeah, let's do it.
First up, we have Rich Sloan, a good friend of mine and a serial media entrepreneur and co-founder of many companies, including Startup Nation, Fan Label, and an app I'm already addicted to, even just in beta form, Dance Fight. Rich is one of the smartest and fearless executives I know. And Rich, I have been asked by a certain someone to make sure that you A, brushed your teeth this morning, and B, you're wearing pants.
I am wearing swim trunks.
Okay.
We don't even have a swimming pool at this house, but that was my fashion statement du jour.
Okay, well, we'll see if you get in trouble later. It's not up to us. All right.
Totally COVID appropriate, yes.
I'm going to try to achieve all of the objectives of this session today through substance, not the superficialities of my woeful fashion.
Next up, we have my friend Christina Ochoa. She is an actress, a science communicator. She's an ocean advocate and founder of QE Productions with a focus on scientifically infused content. She's a board member for Earth's Oceans and Oceana, and she's currently filming season 5 of Animal Kingdom on TNT. And this is a random fun fact that she provided us. She is the proud reigning champ of, wait, let me make sure I get this right, the unofficial Who Takes a Pic with the Biggest Scorpion on Their Face in the Amazon Jungle competition.
No.
Which sounds terrifying. I've seen the photo. We're going to put it up now. It creeps me out all the time. But good for you, Christina. Well done, and congratulations.
Yeah, it's like a big mic drop, you know, normally in auditions especially. Clearly very helpful to have like a whiptailless scorpion on your face. That's very valuable.
Could you have done Fear Factor? Would you have done Fear Factor back in the day?
On a daily basis, I do my own Fear Factor, yeah.
Finally, our special guest this week, who we're going to be speaking to in our 2-in-1 segment, I'm excited to welcome Dr. Laurence Kaptain, Dean of the College of Arts and Media for the University of Colorado at Denver. I've been fortunate enough to be the chair of the Dean's Advisory Board for a few years and see firsthand how this university is doing things with art students that very few other institutions are, teaching them the business of the arts. We're excited to have some time to talk through the next generation and how they're focusing on the now and the next. Dean Kaptain, welcome. We're really, really glad to have you here.
Well, thanks. I'm glad to be here, and I'm very proud to be dean of a unit of 1,300 arts and media students that aren't stage people, but they're music business. They work with licensing and publishing, recording, songwriting, TV, film, and digital design, digital animation. So we're the behind the scenes folks, but a lot of our students have a great agility to do these technical jobs across genres and across disciplines.
If I may, I'm not sure what I majored in when I went to University of Colorado. It was it was a blur. But I will tell you that I wish your coursework were available to me, knowing what I know today and being in the music and tech space. We are dying for people who bridge the arts and business. That's huge. It's beautiful.
Well, we're going to segue back to that. I don't want to get too far ahead. So when we get to the 2-on-1, we're going to learn a lot more about your space. But we're going to start by asking the three of you your responses to this week's poll. How important in this time has sharing the wealth been for what you do in your career?
I think Christina's taking that first.
I'll go ahead and say I think it's crucial. If we think about art in the same way you can think about any discipline, science, or sharing data is mandatory and the only way we can build those building blocks. So collaboration is, crucial.
It's been very true to my experience during this time as well, that just really, I would even say like aggressively opening up possibilities with people has been like a survival method. It's been a fear factor survival technique. As we power through so many unknowns, it's about putting some things out there and getting the wet clay and starting to shape it together with other people, and that's been just huge. It's truly been survival on my part with my ventures.
Larry, for you, it's almost a given because of what you do in academia that it's about sharing empirical knowledge. How vital has that been when with a student base and a professor base or a faculty base that has been nervous about what comes next?
Well, I think what we've done is we've been combining forces. Like we have a project right now, it's called the New Horizons Design Entrepreneurs, and it's 8 arts and media students, 8 entrepreneurship students in the business school, and 8 engineering students. And the 24 of those people they're deciding what kind of creative venture they can build, and they're establishing their professional networks as they do it, and they're building their leadership skills. And so I think for artists to put out that unformed clay, it's always going to bounce back to you with comments. And again, having that network of people to react as you share, it'll just improve your own art and your own creativity.
What have been the biggest challenges facing you currently? You all come at this from different areas. What has, for your part of the creative community, what has been the biggest challenge at this time?
With my college, the film and TV students and the sculpture students and the photography students, they're so tied to their equipment that without that equipment, they don't feel so good about things. And, we have limited face-to-face right now and taking all kinds of safety precautions, but the sound, the lights, the grip, all those basic foundational things that they're teaching in film and TV, for example, went away on March 16th. And the students had already paid their tuition and we're doing it on Zoom. And, while we've gotten better at that, I think that's been the big challenge is the limited face-to-face and the distancing.
I would put it into the category of experimentation as where there have been challenges. First of all, anytime you are pushing yourself out of your comfort zone and you start experimenting with new things, that's just rife with challenge, and it's thrilling and exciting as well, obviously. But getting into uncharted territory is just, like, who are the right people who I can collaborate with to make that happen? Those are precious judgment calls that you make. What are the right judgment calls to make in terms of prioritizing? What to do in what order. So at that level of experimentation, it's been really challenging. And then because of everything pandemic, just in my world, capital has become a scarcer resource, and that has driven the decisions that you do make to be decisions you can only make once. You don't have any fat or fluff in resources. You've got to really nail it. So the experimentation has to be really well calculated and well executed. So
I have had no challenges. No. Sitting at home with your demons for, alone 6 months in a row, I think creatively can feel invasive because our creativity is so tied into our sense of identity, I think, as human beings. And I think that, hearing Larry talk about his students not having their equipment, how much that may affect their mood and their state. I think that that's happened for most creatives, where all of a sudden you have new limitations to kind of confront that attack your sense of self beyond just your work. So that, I think, the human element has been probably one of the trickiest because it's so intertwined with creativity.
I'm so glad you said that, Christina, because we've shot many episodes now at this point, and everybody answers this question in a way that's somehow contextualized with their career or their business, as opposed to their own individual humanity. And we've all had this experience. And so you started tapping into this, but I would love to hear from all three of you, just in terms of, like, how have you discovered something new about yourself? How have you started thinking differently about yourself because of this? And what have been your personal challenges, and what have you worked through? And get as deep as anyone wants, but that's therapy for a bit.
I'll follow up with just saying, just because it's what I was thinking about. For me, navigating my emotional resources and learning in an industry that is so dependent on networking and connections and interpersonal relationships, to distinguish between someone I'm friends with and someone I'm friendly with. That distinction has been like the biggest lesson for me, and something that I had to learn and was very difficult to navigate. Understanding, I'm allotting a lot of resources and emotional time to this person because I value the relationship and I'm friendly, but that's not a relationship I care to cultivate when everything is stripped away necessarily.
For me, I would walk between buildings because my college is in 12 different buildings. And so I would use that time to think and to kind of pause in between things and reflect in 10 to 12 minute increments, and all that was taken away. And I gotta say, I still feel a little lost, not getting out between things and not greeting people on the way and, in and out and all, because, I think all of us as artists, we work on building social capital. And as a dean of an art school, a heavy STEM type institution, I really depend on building relationships for the the viability of our college and for, the ability to get more resources and so on. And now that's all flattened out. And again, emotionally too, that's been a real challenge.
Yeah, I would think with you, Larry, I mean, I've been on that campus so many times, and just the energy of students. I mean, I'll say that for me, the energy of not being on an airplane and landing in New York and going and seeing my colleagues and going to my clients and the bustle, and it has been hard. I'm not as focused as I wish I was at times. Rich, what about you?
Before I give an overview on myself, I'm a follower of yours on Instagram, Patrick, and I recall over the past year or two the regular posting you've made of yourself sitting on the airplane with the New York Times in your lap with whatever shoes you're wearing and it's a ritualistic thing. But I wonder too, on those airplane flights, and this gets to what I'm about to share about my experience, if you end up talking to the people next to you and meeting new people, or do you keep it, do you have your earbuds in the whole time?
It's funny because I tend to be the earbuds guy in the newspaper on purpose, but then every once in a while you find that person. Like I have a dear friend of mine now in New York who we met on an airplane, and we've now collaborated on 5 projects. And yeah, to your point. And so, I know that you will talk to anybody.
Yeah, well, so that makes the point. Zoom has backfilled a lot of what otherwise might be in-person meetings, so that's been awesome. But I feel like I'm missing out on the richness of life, and the richness of life for me, in part, is those random discoveries of other people's magic, and much to my wife's consternation, those just 10-minute conversations that I'm always opening up in random places out there in the world that I then hand off to her to finish. But I just love learning about people and from people, and I get tons of inspiration from that. As a creative entrepreneur, I am famously, or maybe true to the breed, going very deep on my stuff. And if I don't bump into these other sources of inspiration, I miss out on a lot of the world. So I really miss that.
What about you, T?
Oh gosh.
He does not like it when we turn it around on him.
No, I think I've struggled with kind of my definition of accomplishment. I think for a long time, in the corporate world and within the confines of that, it's feeling busy, pulling out your hair, being always on the go, hustle, bustle. That feels like, even though you've not produced anything, that energy feels as if you've done something. And we've had to take a moment where for a while, nothing was happening, or we were scratching our heads. And I got nervous that meant that I wasn't doing anything. And in fact, actually, I think that in that quiet time, I did accomplish a lot. I've had to work through this, speaking of therapy with someone, but I've understood now that it doesn't have to be that energy and that chaos to feel as if I've taken some steps in a good direction.
But wasn't that forced pause button the inspiration for what you guys have created here?
Very much so. Very, very much so. And Patrick was a therapist of mine for a little bit too. We would talk, on a weekly basis, and realize that we were just shooting the shit and complaining, but also being hey, this is neat, and complaining, and hey, this is neat. And then we're no one's talking like this. No one's having these, because we're all saying company lines, or we're all trying to make this. For a while, we were all very Pollyanna and very because we had to be, because it was terrifying. And I think we've started settling into this place where we can be real and we can be practical, and we can think comfortably about what's now and what's coming. And then that was the distillery.
Well, but I also think that there's something about, there wasn't enough longevity. There wasn't enough history or track record to compare it to. So when this was brand new and we were all sitting at home on our couches, I call up Rich and his wife and be like, what are you guys doing today? I'm doing nothing. And they're like, we're doing nothing. And we're like, okay, bye. And now we actually have stuff to talk about. So this brings up a question that I think is really interesting, is what have you seen during this time that is interesting to look at, that is exciting? And we're going to talk about the next later, but let's talk about things that have sparked your interest in, especially in the creative communities, holy crud, I can't believe they've done that now. I'll tell you, for me as a producer, I had a chance to work on the Democratic convention, and I've been watching a lot of these kind of large scale drone remote things that have started to happen now as an answer to where we are. And just the innovativeness I am seeing people do because they have to. And it's forced people to take off the restrictions. Well, we always have done it this way. And I love that we're not seeing that right now. So let me ask you, what has excited you during this time because it's new?
This has accelerated what for many in the venture capital space, which I am involved in with my ventures, this has accelerated a 10-year window into a 6-month window. The behaviors we're seeing today were projected to be 7 and 8 years out from now. And so it's really exciting to see change happening that fast. And it's just full of opportunity for people to serve the new behaviors and the new needs. That's the first thing that comes to mind for me. I can tell you that whether it is, related to health, whether it is related to training, because people are doing things in new ways now, whether it is related to new ways to consume media, entertainment, news, whatever it may be, there's so much that is happening so fast right now. And what we have is people like us as consumers are all of a sudden more open to things just because we have so many new dynamics around us. So I think that's what I'm noticing, and that's what I'm leaning into hard.
I think from a personal standpoint, within creatives, I notice a lot of conflict when they talk about what's happening, which is interesting in itself to me to just watch. People want to have a sense of perspective and gratitude for, this career, it's a luxury career, any creative career and endeavor, no one's putting a gun to our head, and we're not going to war to protect our country and our loved ones. We're not sweeping the streets. No one's like, oh, you have to be a creative or you can't support your family. And I think that a lot of people want to have a sense of gratitude for that position, and yet they feel very conflicted when they want to perhaps complain or say something negative. So you see those like split seconds where people are like, I don't know if I should complain. And when they ask you, how are you? In the most basic, everyone's a little stunted. They don't know what to say. And I think a lot of it is not just internal, but external. Like, well, if I complain, this person has it worse than me. I don't want to complain. Or if I say I'm good, is that insensitive to what other people are going? I like to watch or observe and learn from that internal, kind of dialogue that we're all having when they ask you, how's it going?
Isn't it amazing, by the way, how that just simple, how are you, how's it going question took on dimension during this time? It's like, that's a real question now.
Yeah.
That's vital.
Careful what you ask, by the way.
Yeah. You're going to get an answer that's interesting.
Yeah.
I think time has really been thrown off in this. And again, not just, my walking between buildings, but at some meetings, it's just amazing. We're very time conscious at the university. The classes start at a certain time and they end at a certain time, and we have to grades at a certain point and credits for this and credits for that. But, now I find there are some groups that we have regular meetings, and people forget to stop meeting when there's nothing to really talk about. And so, and I don't want to be rude or anything, but all of a sudden this morning there were 7 people there, and the person that usually leads it couldn't make it, had a sick kid. And so no one really knew what to do. And it was a lot of fumbling around there. So again, I think that's one of the offsetting things about this period is the sense of time's been changed.
Yeah.
Larry, tell us more, and we can use this as a nice transition into the 2-on-1 with you. Tell us more about, because you've been in this in real time, how education has changed and evolved in a very, very quick amount of time, and what you see the future changes being too, and sort of indicators of what's to come.
Well, I think the real interesting thing has been things changed so abruptly in March. Honestly, it was like Friday, March 13th, and then Monday, March 16th. You know, all of a sudden we were out of the offices and the buildings were closed, and you know, I mean, everything kind of changed in society. And I heard from so many students and parents that, oh, this isn't what I signed up for, this remote learning and all. And I got to tell you, it's all changed this fall. People are realizing, the faculty are saying, hey, some things are working better on Zoom than they were face to face. And students, I haven't gotten a student or parent complaint yet, which is really rare when you got 1,300 students, that's, you know, 2,600 parents, and then 5,000 extended family or so. So I think that's been a real remarkable thing, is that I think when we do go back to face, I think some people are going to look at the best parts of Zoom and try to keep those.
We talked briefly before the call, and you mentioned some of the best parts of Zoom to Patrick and I. Things like seeing everybody face to face and having a deeper, you know, connection with your professor and stuff. Like, is there other stuff that you're seeing that this medium has gifted you?
Yeah, I think not for just women, but for introverts. But a lot of times, young women in a classroom with a lot of guys, they won't get called on as much. That's kind of a traditional thing in schools. And Zoom has kind of democratized education a lot more, where introverts and women can have more of an upfront voice. And yeah, what I told Patrick and T was, it's so different from looking at the back of people's heads, like the students have done. All of a sudden, they're looking at each other, and so that's a whole different affect.
Rich and I, as parents of college-age kids, it has been a struggle. This idea of, do you let them go to school? Do you not? You know, what is when we start thinking about the post-COVID, specifically, what I have always admired about your college is that you are teaching the practicality of being in the arts. It's really easy to be, Christina, you said, you know, it's really easy to be the luxury artist. We're all kind of artists, but to make a living at this and understand how to make the commerce of arts is hard for a lot of us. It's a lot of trial and error. And the fact that you're teaching people this, but are you seeing, and I'm asking this specifically because, you know, we are talking about the creative communities and you're bringing the next generation in. Are you seeing that people's priorities post-COVID are changing? The types of things they want to study, why they want to study it, how many years they take. What are you seeing? What's your crystal ball?
Boy, that's a great question, because just on Tuesday night, we had a college night for the Denver School of the Arts. And the Denver School of the Arts, it's very classically oriented. Classical orchestra, classical band, a jazz band, opera, musicals, ballet, dance, and, you know, pretty traditional art like painting and drawing. So we had 70 parents and students, and we had two panels. First, we had a faculty panel of folks who were practitioners pretty much, but it was interesting what the students had to say. A few months ago, before this, I think they would have said, well, I'm an art major and I'm going to go into the art field. And they kept using the word industry over and over again. And it gives me goosebumps right now, because they've gotten over that hurdle of the prissiness. Yeah. And I came up in the classical music world. So, I mean, I spent, 30 or 40 years in classical music, orchestras, soul, and all that stuff, recording. And it's so distant now, because this focus that I have and that our school has, again, it's on industry and an artistic workforce.
As somebody who spent their career turning art into commerce and commercializing TV shows and the like, it's there wasn't a direction, there wasn't a class you could take for this. This is something that in most cases people like me stumbled into. It all came about at one point, and and that might be an interesting thing just to talk about too, in terms of like, how are you seeing people change direction with their educational courses? Like, there's so many different ways to learn now. And I've, as a college age student myself, I I look at everyone who, I mean, Patrick, your son, and you know what you're spending to send him to school. Like, there's just so many new ways to learn, and it's a new world, and education has, evolved so quickly. How do you manage that, Larry, in terms of other ways to learn and how you value what you offer as like a brick and mortar school?
Well, that's a real prime question, and I'm sure Christina and Rich, from their experiences and what got them to where they are today, was the informal learning that you get from other students or faculty that you don't have for a class, but that you engage in a conversation with and other professionals. That's the disturbing thing from last spring. But now people are adapting to it, and we're big on having our students network with each other. And I've started hearing that students are asking the professor, by the way, Professor Smith, when we're done, can you sign off but leave this on so we can talk? And I'm thinking, isn't that great that the students want to keep going? They want to keep it going, but they want to do it on their own. Not that they don't like the professor there, but they want to kind of establish their domain for learning and for creative work.
You've talked in the past to me and to T about this idea of dual majors and people kind of looking at their life in more than one way. And I think about, is the opportunity pool, I'm asking you, and I know this is hard because of what you do, but do you think the opportunity pool for people that are traditional artists, like you said, like what does an opera major do when there's no opera? Do you think the opportunity pool for people that are studying the arts or the commerce of the arts or the creative communities, do you think it's decreasing now or increasing? Or
I think that the people are getting these transferable skills that other people want and need in other types of businesses. And so I think coming back, there's going to be a different type of creative work, but there's also going to be more opportunities for folks to use their communication skills. I mean, our songwriting majors are the best example. We have 45 songwriting majors, and I meet a lot of them, and I meet them like the first couple of weeks, and chit chat. Sometimes I meet the parents and, what are you going to do? Oh, I'm going to be a songwriter. I want to go to Nashville, and then I see them a little bit later and I say, well, how's it going? They say, oh, good. But, I'm double majoring now in recording arts and music business, but I'm going to keep my songwriting going and keep taking those classes, or I'm going to double major in songwriting and recording. So they're seeing that already, that as a songwriter, they're going to develop excellent writing skills, excellent communication skills, but that they want to have some kind of hands-on with the business part of it and being entrepreneurial and possibly the technical part, knowing the recording business.
Yeah, I think that's really exciting. I want to bring everybody back in, because I think where you're taking this is towards the next. And I think that the thing that's really interesting about this, the idea of duality or growing in more thing. I mean, Christina, you're a great example of someone who has created a career doing things that might not on the outside think you would put them together, but they work together really harmoniously. When you look at the next and you think about where things are going and how people can kind of reimagine, what does that open up for you?
I mean, I think it's something that surprised me too. It was never intentional. I mean, scientist by training, but actress by trade is a very weird hybrid, I think, that I don't necessarily, think was something I could have planned. But I think what I see is actually in that Venn diagram, how much they have in common, how much, training and learning and having an open mind, being able to change direction or change your opinion when new empirical evidence or data is presented. Things like that are crucial to the creative arts too, because we just use different words. We're about like, oh, they're malleable and they're fluid and they're this, and it's just different terminology for the same open-minded, exploratory type of attitude that I think most creatives have, whether they're in front of or behind or supporting the industry and that workforce or the artists themselves. And I think that connective tissue right now is the happy place where most people are thriving, because the environment doesn't lend itself to niche very specialized and skill sets. I think they have to transfer, and then we're all figuring out what those are for ourselves and for others. And I love that.
And I think that is that idea of figuring out for yourself. And I mean, hopefully we can help with some of that for our friends, or at least from an inspiration standpoint. Speaking of which, Rich, you have, as an entrepreneur, you spend a lot of time coming up with things and hoping that it might click, and not knowing if it can or can't. But that takes its tenacity, especially in times like this. What drives you to do that, and how is that transferable to anybody?
I want to. I think the answer is yes to that, and I think it is transferable mostly by example and inspiration. And by just emboldening people to lean in and take the risk and screw up and try it a different way next time. And just that incredible exhilaration that comes from all that. But if I may, I actually want to rewind to the question that you just asked Christina, and that she gave a great answer to about the next. And I am not sure that I know how to capture this, because frankly, Patrick, you're the master of content in a way that goes way beyond me. But I'm seeing a huge opportunity in the unflattening of content. What I mean by that, and what I think I'm trying to say is, I think that technology is going to give us, that has been accelerated by all these things going on around us, is going to give us ways to have interactive experiences with content, with each other, with media, in a way that is fantasy-like. I think it's a really exciting moment, and I think it's coming fast. You mentioned I'm involved in the latest project of mine, which is Dance Fight, and we're taking a TikTok style experience, which is an expression experience. It's amazing. And we're trying to do a next generation thing by getting people involved so they can vote and determine outcomes. And that's just a small example. There are so many cool things where content is going to become your thing that you can play with and manipulate and participate in. So that's very exciting to me.
As I've said on here before, I probably spend vastly too much time on TikTok, and I kind of feel like the guy in the white creepy van that is on TikTok because of my age. But that said, I've never seen so much creative excellence in one spot. Just the sheer diversity. And to your point, that didn't exist, a year and a half ago? I don't even know.
Not at this scale. Yeah.
Not at this scale. And you're right. Everything is changing so rapidly. Does that, as someone whose livelihood is trying to get people to give you money to create this stuff, does that scare you that the shelf life, is so potentially short?
I mean, yes. You have to move so fast, and not only fast relative to your opportunity, but just knowing that, like, while you're thinking of something cool, probably around the same time, a bunch of other people are brewing up something in that category, and it is a foot race. And Patrick, you mentioned that you have a time drain on TikTok. Well, little companies like Dance Fight that are out there are looking for those same hours of your day, that same mind share. And so you're in a race and a battle. And yeah, it is terrifying that it is something that can capture the moment. But if you don't continue to innovate it and evolve it and be extraordinary, then you're in the rearview mirror really quickly.
Yeah.
Larry, are kids or young adults, are they talking like this? Are they thinking about this? Are they aware of what we're all just now kind of seeing happen so quickly before our eyes?
Yeah, I think they are very much. While everyone's not going to build a business and become an entrepreneur, we're the faculty, we are viewing the toolkit of an entrepreneur as essential for our students to thrive and survive and put themselves out there. And so the big change is, like Christina said, specialization is almost a thing of the past. I mean, just a handful of people in our big nation of 300 million can afford to specialize, because generalist skills are being used now. David Epstein wrote a book called Range. I don't know if anyone read that, but it talks about the rise of the generalist, and we see how autonomy and social engagement have been flipped. Again, I was told to be in the practice room, don't let anyone bother you, don't answer the door. Now you want to collaborate with people, you want to build a network, you want to learn from other people. So yeah, things are flipping around a lot.
Do you think that there's also a mental and social benefit to the generalist? Do you think, I always think, they say jack of all trades, master of none, but is there, I think I find lately a common thread through people is having a bunch of hobbies, for example, projects at home and whatever. It's helping mental health. It's getting people absorbed in learning and being creative in different ways, whether or not their career depends on it. The people who are leveraging all those varied interests seem to be doing better in the world.
TikTok has been so egalitarian, I think, because again, you've got people with day jobs who are dancing, singing, acting, comedy. It's put this wonderful way for people to express themselves in a rather short amount of time out there. I'm quite taken by that idea of having people being able to do different types of creative expression without having to get permission ahead of time from one of the gatekeepers in an orchestra or a theater company or a dance company.
I was thinking about that when we were talking about the person studying opera at the Detroit Performing Arts Academy or whatever. The first thought that came to mind for me was TikTok. It's a new world, and
Yeah.
she can have a million views, or he can have a million views tomorrow, and would never get that kind of exposure walking into the opera hall in Denver.
Yeah.
It's extraordinary.
And it's really interesting that those 1 million views or likes or whatever they are, that doesn't necessarily now make these creators famous. It sometimes does, but what it does is it validates their creativity in a really, really important way, and incentivizes them to try more and to push the limits, and that they can do it in their home and with little money and without these gatekeepers. It's really quite beautiful.
Larry, you're going to remember this probably, 6 years ago. I was looking for ways to recruit new editors and producers and developers for projects. And I went to University of Colorado and I said, listen, we will do a competition, and whoever gives us the best pitch for an idea, we will pay you $1,000 and we'll represent your idea and bring it to market. And what a great thing. And back then you had all these people in these classrooms looking at me like I am the next Scorsese. I'm not going to do some random television project. And those people today, had I done that today, they'd be absolutely. I have 17 ideas that take things about AR and VR, and we're going to do this thing, and it's going to be like that. To your point, Rich, when you're talking about the acceleration of creativity, the fact that it actually gives me goosebumps. The fact that we now are to a place where nothing is off the table. And especially considering where we were on that March 16th, Larry, where everything was closed.
Yeah.
How cool is that?
Yeah, it is serious time for experimentation by all, the consumers and the creators.
Mm-hmm.
When being closed in, I think there's been a reciprocity of people having to open up their thinking, and where people would walk down a street and not notice things from each side. I think now when people get out, they're noticing more because it's something that they've been denied for so long. So there's elements of this that are going to change things for the better after we come back.
And the business leaders are listening too, which I think is really important, that they're seeing a new value to creativity and to the access to all of this new stuff, which is exciting as well.
One thing we didn't touch on, it just seems like just one more really interesting, colorful thread going through this whole moment is that there is a lot of cultural conflict and awakening happening at the same time that all of the COVID stuff is happening. And I think that too contributes to this idea of experimentation and new forms of expression and new levels of boldness or courage, of voice. So that's just one more factor that's just, putting more energy into the space right now.
Yeah, I hired an activist in residence. Seriously, we have a young woman who was active with art during the big demonstrations in Denver. And so she's working with a committee that we have, a task force, to see how can we build expression, activism into people's art and creativity. So stand by.
Really cool.
That is the next. That's amazing.
Audiences are also going to respond to that because they're scrutinizing content very differently too. Perfunctory doesn't cut it anymore. You want content that stands for something and that says something more than, just hitting a bunch of like check boxes and being mindless. So I think people are seeking that out, and their sensibilities are changing as audiences, as consumers as well.
I'm so excited by this. Where I thought this might go and where it's gone is so different in such a great way. I mean, I really feel the inspiration. And I think the thing that's really cool, we're giving people permission. We're not saying that things are bad or that things are going to be better. Like, we're not doing the Pollyanna thing. We're giving people permission to explore and to test, and to kind of take off those blinders. And if nothing else, if people walk away from this episode of The Distillery with that, I think we've done our job.
It's great to be part of this conversation. I love, as I mentioned, I love the vibe of meeting new people. And Christina, it's great to learn about you and be inspired by you. And Dean Kaptain, same. I love what you're doing for those people and with those people. And T and Patrick, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much, you guys. This has been, it feels like a very creative space, a very safe space, and very inspiring one at that.
Yeah, I appreciate the invitation because I feel a lot of commonality with Christina and Rich and what they're doing and the way that they're thinking. And I learned a lot just from being around you today. Thank you.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much. I think let's talk a little bit about next week's episode and the poll. For a lot of us, our parents' generation stayed at the same job or within the same confines of a career for a really long time. I know that mine did. We're interested about you. What was your career trajectory? What were your pivots? Did you have any? If so, how many, etc.? Head over to thedistillery.live. Vote, give us some details, comments, send us your thoughts, etc. We're excited to hear from you.
We need to make sure that when we have that, there is a 20 or more category, because that will be mine.
Yeah, that'll be fun.
Yeah. But I digress. Right now, I have more important work to do than the poll even, and that is to thank our guests for this week, Christina, Rich, Larry. We want to thank you so much for being here. This has been a great conversation.
Thanks, everybody. Really happy you joined.
Thank you for creating this.
Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.
Thanks.
We'll have links to their sites as well as all the follow-up items we've mentioned here on thedistillery.live. And with that, Mr. Ferguson, one more in the books.
Good
to see you.
Good to see you. This was fun.
All right, everybody. Thank you for being here. Have a great day.
Future is now.